The movie begins by showing the vibe of Busan City, Korea, in 1976, where a boy named Lee Jun-sok is having dinner with his parents. His father, Lee, is the most respected gangster boss in the city. Soon after, Jun-sok is called by his three friends named Hund, Dong-soo, Sung-taek, and Jong-ho, who invite him to play at Jong-ho's house because Jong-ho's mother has just bought a new video cassette during her trip to Japan. When they arrive at Jong-ho's house, they immediately play the hidden video cassette owned by Jong-ho's mother, only to find adult scenes on it. After watching the video, Jong-ho, who has always been business-minded, convinces his friends to sell pictures of menstruating women to their classmates. Jun-sok and the others agree, so they start the business secretly to avoid getting caught by the teachers. Despite being seen as troublemakers at school, Jun-sok and his friends have a strong bond because they never judge each other based on their looks or social status. This is evident in their treatment of Dong-soo, who comes from a modest family with his father, Hund, working as a mortician. Jun-sok and his friends even admire Dong-soo's father's profession because it requires courage and patience, qualities not everyone possesses. Despite being in different classes, Jun-sok and his friends remain close as they enter high school in 1981. Sung-taek, known for his intelligence, is in the top class along with Jong-ho, who often sells lottery tickets instead of paying attention in class and consequently gets in trouble with teachers. Meanwhile, Jun-sok and Dong-soo find themselves in a class known for troublemakers, where they frequently face punishment from their teacher, Kwon-kyu. During one incident, Dong-soo silently accepts punishment for breaking the rules, but when Kwon-kyu turns to Jun-sok, he asked about Jun-sok's father's occupation, so Jun-sok said his father was a gangster boss. Hearing the answer made Kwon-kyu think that Jun-sok was playing with him, so Kwon-kyu became even angrier and hit Jun-sok repeatedly. Unable to bear it, Jun-sok fought back against Kwon-kyu, which eventually made Kwon-kyu stop punishing him. Later, it's revealed to Kwon-kyu that Jun-sok's father is the feared gangster boss of the city, leading students to consider Jun-sok the unofficial leader of the school, with Dong-soo as his deputy. After that, Kwon-kyu is left stunned by this revelation. A few days later, the school had a special festival to celebrate its anniversary. The festival got even more exciting when the popular girl band Rainbow performed. Jun-sok and his three friends were there too, having a great time. They were especially impressed by the beautiful vocalist Jin-suk. The next day, Jong-ho told Sung-taek that Jun-sok had invited them to his house next Sunday. Jun-sok wanted to invite the members of the Rainbow Band too. On Sunday, Sung-taek, wanting to impress Jin-suk, dressed nicely and even brought perfume. When they got to Jun-sok's house, they were welcomed by Jun-sok and Dong-soo. Jun-sok then introduced them to the Rainbow Band members. When Jun-sok praised Sung-taek as the nicest, smartest, and neatest guy, the Rainbow members laughed at him, thinking he was too serious. This made Sung-taek upset and turned off the music before leaving the room. Later, Jun-sok asked Sung-taek to chat privately on the rooftop. He quickly said sorry for hurting Sung-taek's feelings and offered to help him get closer to the Rainbow member he liked. Sung-taek then confessed that he liked Jin-suk. Hearing this, Jun-sok was surprised but eventually agreed to step back so Sung-taek could have a chance. Sometime later, Sung-taek was spotted with Jin-suk in her room. Dong-soo, who knew, asked Jun-sok why he allowed Sung-taek to get close to Jin-suk. At that moment, Dong-soo also confessed his interest in Jin-suk. Hearing this, Jun-sok became upset because Dong-soo was also interested in the same girl as him, so Jun-sok asked Dong-soo not to discuss it further. The next day, Sung-taek skipped school for a date with Jin-suk at the roller skating rink. While they were having fun, Jae-young, Sung-taek's rival, started bothering Jin-suk. Because Sung-taek couldn't stand it further, he tried to confront Jae-young, who came with his group. At that moment, Jae-young seemed to underestimate Sung-taek and intended to beat him up, but he and his group abandoned their intention after Jun-sok and Dong-soo appeared at the scene. Without hesitation, Jae-young and his friends left because they didn't want to face Jun-sok and Dong-soo, who were known for their fighting skills. After that, Jun-sok and his friends seemed to make up and hung out as usual because they believed their friendship was more important than romance. On another day after school, Jung-ho invited his friends to watch a movie at the cinema. They made a bet that the last person to arrive would have to pay for everyone's tickets. They all ran as fast as they could to avoid being last. When they got there, Jun-sok saw Jae-young's friends in line for tickets, but Dong-soo cut in line without anyone daring to stop him. Just before the movie started, Sung-taek and Jung-ho went to the toilet. Suddenly, Jae-young and his group entered and attacked Sung-taek, who had confronted Jae-young before at the roller skating rink. At that moment, Jung-ho managed to escape and rushed to tell Jun-sok and Dong-soo about the attack on Sung-taek. Unfortunately, Jae-young's schoolmates at the cinema noticed the commotion and surrounded Jun-sok and his friends. They were forced to fight against the students who attacked them. When things got out of hand, security stepped in and stopped the fight. The next day, Dong-soo lost control and broke a classroom window after he and Jun-sok were expelled from school because of the fight. At that moment, teachers and students watched silently, seeing Dong-soo's behavior, which had previously received warnings knowing. When Dong-soo got home, he helped his father with work as usual, but his bad mood led to an argument, and he stormed out after his father asked him to get a towel. Meanwhile, Sung-taek used up his savings to propose to Jun-sok that they move to another city and start new. He blamed himself for not being able to fight Jae-young, which led to Jun-sok and Dong-soo's expulsion. Hearing this, Jun-sok refused, urging Sung-taek not to drop out of school and sacrifice his education for him. He confessed that he and Dong-soo had chosen to become gangster instead of dealing with school. 3 years later, on Christmas Eve in 1984, Sung-taek and Jung-ho, now college students, visited Jun-sok's simple rented house. They were surprised to find Jin-suk opening the door, as Jun-sok was struggling with drug addiction. Jun-sok, upon seeing his friends, revealed that he had married Jin-suk, but their marriage was troubled, especially due to his drug problem. Hearing this, Sung-taek felt sorry for Jin-suk, knowing she was unhappy with Jun-sok, despite his lingering feelings for her. Jung-ho then asked about Dong-soo, who had been missing for a while. Jun-sok explained that Dong-soo was in prison, just like him, because they worked for a gangster named Sung-gan, who often ordered them to commit crimes. Sometime later, Jun-sok visited Lee's house, where Lee was meeting with his confidant, Kim. In their conversation, Lee instructed Kim to handle all his gangster affairs because he didn't trust his son, Jun-sok, who was a drug addict, to manage the business. However, Lee still hoped his son could learn about their business, so he asked Kim to teach Jun-sok various things about the gangster business they had built. On another day, Sung-gan called Jun-sok, angry that Jun-sok had been working with another gangster group. Feeling betrayed, Sung-gan slashed Jun-sok's face with a knife as a goodbye gift. That night, Dong-soo, released from prison, got an invitation from Sung-gan for a meeting. Sung-gan asked Dong-soo to carry out a mission, promising money and trust from Sung-gan to manage some of his businesses in return. After hearing all the tempting offers, without hesitation, Dong-soo accepted the mission. Sometime later, Lee was found dead. Jun-sok's gang members, including Kim, Jung-ho, and Dong-soo, mourned with him. Meanwhile, Sung-taek sadly missed the funeral because of his military service. After Lee's funeral, Dong-soo told Jun-sok he was going back to work with Sung-gan. Hearing this, Jun-sok was upset, knowing Sung-gan was a thug who used dirty tactics. But Dong-soo argued it would bring more money fund his father's mortician job. After that, Jun-sok couldn't stop him and even thanked him for helping with his father's funeral. 6 years later, in 1990, gangster cars stopped Sung-taek's taxi. Unexpectedly, the gangster was led by Jun-sok, who had replaced his father as the gangster boss. Jun-sok then invited Sung-taek to have a meal together at a diner while sharing their respective experiences. At the diner, Jun-sok proudly said he was drug-free, so he could focus on learning his father's business. He planned to manage most of the gangster business, although he was still under Kim's supervision. Sung-taek also shared his experiences over the past 6 years, and because he began to get drunk from excessive drinking, Sung-taek spoke rudely to Jun-sok, which made Jun-sok's subordinates glare at Sung-taek. Feeling that his subordinates had behaved disrespectfully towards his friend, Jun-sok immediately asked the two of them to apologize to Sung-taek and punished them by making them sit in the car's trunk during the journey back. Turning to Dong-soo, who had become Sung-gan's right-hand man. With his high position, he had a trusted associate named Eun-ki who helped Dong-soo complete various tasks for their boss. Sung-gan was now known to run a fairly large empire. Unfortunately, Sung-gan's gang often used dirty tactics to conduct their business. Sung-gan also frequently disrupted other gangster businesses, including Jun-sok's fishing business. Feeling that Sung-gan posed a threat, Jun-sok was forced to eliminate one of his gang's top officials who was proven to be working with Sung-gan. At the same time, Jun-sok also learned about Dong-soo's constant efforts to disrupt his business at Sung-gan's command, but Jun-sok, still valuing his friendship with Dong-soo, chose not to harm his friend. Often, Jun-sok would meet Dong-soo and invite him to eat together. Unfortunately, Dong-soo always declined, citing lack of time. Dong-soo even refused Jun-sok's invitation to celebrate Sung-taek's success in continuing his studies in America. Because of this, Jun-sok and the others celebrated Sung-taek's success at a karaoke place without Dong-soo. On another day, the police arrested Kim while he was enjoying his time in the sauna, and unexpectedly, Dong-soo became the mastermind behind Kim's arrest because Eun-ki was seen reporting to Dong-soo that their plan to imprison Kim had succeeded. That night, when Dong-soo returned home, he realized he was being followed by Jun-sok's subordinates, who had learned that he was the mastermind behind Kim's arrest. At that moment, Jun-sok's subordinates, who were angry with Dong-soo's behavior, decided to eliminate Jun-sok's friend without their boss's knowledge. Just as Dong-soo entered the house, several people began to attack him, but with his fighting skills, Dong-soo managed to defeat the attackers. After that, he planned to seek revenge on Jun-sok because he believed his friend wanted to harm him. The next day, Jun-sok provided training to his new subordinates so that they could use sashimi knives as deadly weapons when fighting other gangster groups. Meanwhile, Dong-soo led all his subordinates to attack Jun-sok's gangster headquarters. Unfortunately, Dong-soo did not find his target at the headquarters, so he vented his anger on all of Jun-sok's subordinates, including eliminating Jun-sok's trusted associate. After learning that many of his subordinates were killed in Dong-soo's attack, Jun-sok felt very angry, especially since that day coincided with the anniversary of his father's death. However, Jun-sok kindly met Dong-soo not to discuss the attack that had occurred, but to invite Dong-soo to go to the airport together to see Sung take off as he was leaving for America. Dong-soo again said he didn't have time for that and arrogantly stated that he couldn't attend the funeral of Jun-sok's subordinates that he had eliminated. Upon hearing this, Jun-sok felt very disappointed with Dong-soo's attitude, but he tried not to get angry at his friend and asked Dong-soo to go abroad for a while for his safety. Unfortunately, Dong-soo insulted Jun-sok and deeply disappointed him, especially after Dong-soo's subordinates intercepted him with a knife as he was leaving the room, leading him to believe that Dong-soo was really going to kill him. Not long after, when Jun-sok was in front of Dong-soo's headquarters, he was seen standing in front of his car smoking in the rain. Then he threw the cigarette butt as a signal to his subordinates to finish off Dong-soo immediately. At the same time, Dong-soo began to remember his friendship with Jun-sok and the others, and he intended to join in seeing off Sung-taek. Unfortunately, all of this was too late because Jun-sok's subordinates suddenly stabbed Dong-soo to death. At the same time, Eun-ki chose to betray Dong-soo and sided with Jun-sok. 3 years later, Sung-taek had completed his studies in America, and upon his return to Korea, he met Jong-ho, who told him that on the day Sung-taek left for America, Dong-soo was killed by Jun-sok's henchmen. After that incident, Jun-sok became a fugitive until recently, when he was arrested by the police after causing a disturbance at a karaoke place. Jong-ho also mentioned that he had accompanied Hun to visit Jun-sok in prison. At that time, Hun said he had forgiven Jun-sok for Dong-soo's death and understood that his son always caused trouble with many people. Meanwhile, Jong-ho reminded Jun-sok to confess that he did not give the order to kill Dong-soo during the trial, and he even provided notes for Jun-sok to answer all the judge's questions. On the day of the trial, many people came to witness the proceedings, including Jong-ho and Sung-taek. When the judge asked who was behind the murder of Dong-soo, Jun-sok confessed that he was the one who gave the order, and he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. A few days later, Sung-taek visited Jun-sok in prison and asked why he admitted his guilt in front of the judge. Jun-sok then said he felt ashamed because he and Dong-soo were gangsters. Hearing this, Sung-taek reminisced about the past when he and the others were still friends. Several years later, in 1997, two young boys named Sung-hoon and Lee Cheol-ju approached Yong-bak, who was standing in front of his house looking frustrated with his parents' argument. To cheer up Yong-bak, Sung-hoon invited his friends to play games at his house, where some women, including Sung-hoon's mother named Hae-ji, were busy gambling. As Sung-hoon and the others began playing games, Sung-hoon's stepfather, Suk-tae, and his friends suddenly entered and tightly closed Sung-hoon's room so they could enjoy illegal drugs without caring about the underage children in the room. Hae-ji and her friends, upon realizing this, then beat up Suk-tae and the others while reminding them not to use drugs in front of Sung-hoon. 4 years later, in 2001, Sung-hoon had become a high school student, while his two friends did not continue their education and chose to work while became a gangster. When Sung-hoon was picked up by Cheol-ju and Yong-bak, he was curious about Yong-bak's bruised face, which he got after getting into a fight with a gangster group the night before. Upon hearing this, Sung-hoon then asked Yong-bak and Cheol-ju to take him to the gangster's location because he wanted to confront the gangsters who had beaten up his friend. Upon arrival, Sung-hoon instructed his two friends to stay in the car while he entered and confronted the gang members who were relaxing in the sauna. Without wasting time, Sung-hoon attacked the gang leader before fleeing with his two friends who had been waiting for him outside. Another day, the three of them rented a motorbike to take their crushes for a ride, and the gang leader who was previously beaten by Sung-hoon saw them and ordered his henchmen to seek revenge. Upon arriving at a karaoke place, Sung-hoon and the others began enjoying their time singing until Sung-hoon stepped out of the karaoke room to go to the restroom. As he exited the restroom, Sung-hoon was approached by Ah-rum, Yong-bak's crush, who turned out to be more interested in him, so she invited him to sleep together. Hearing this, Sung-hoon happily accepted the invitation. Meanwhile, Yong-bak and the others seemed to be enjoying themselves singing, unaware that the gangsters' henchmen were about to attack. Returning to Sung-hoon, he and Ah-rum went to the beach and enjoying their intimate moment in a lighthouse, while Yong-bak and Cheol-ju were beaten up by the gangsters. After Yong-bak regained consciousness and couldn't find Sung-hoon, he immediately rode his motorcycle to search for him, fearing that his friend had become a victim of the gangsters. Unfortunately, during the ride, Yong-bak had an accident and could not be saved. On the day of Yong-bak's funeral, Sung-hoon felt regretful and continued to blame himself for his friend's accident, even showing great resentment towards Ah-rum, who had taken him away from the karaoke place on the night of Yong-bak's accident. Amidst his troubled thoughts, Sung-hoon returned home only to witness Hae-ji being beaten by Suk-tae. Calmly, Suk-tae told Sung-hoon that hitting each other was normal in a household. Hearing this, Sung-hoon became enraged and stabbed his stepfather in the eye with chopsticks and beat him mercilessly until Suk-tae attempted to run out of the house, but Sung-hoon, who was very angry, continued to mercilessly beat his stepfather. 9 years later, Sung-hoon had grown adult and become the leader of a gangster group in Busan. One night, he led his henchmen to attack another gangster group to expand his leadership territory around a temple. After defeating the other gangsters, Sung-hoon's henchmen suddenly ran into the temple, where Cheol-ju, who had become a monk, threatened to burn down the temple if the gangsters continued to cause chaos. At that moment, Sung-hoon was quite surprised by Cheol-ju's change after being missing for so long and choosing to become a monk after Yong-bak's death. Seeing Cheol-ju pouring gasoline and preparing to light a match, Sung-hoon hit his old friend while warning him not to do something foolish. The next day, Sung-hoon along with his right-hand man, Chi-sung, invited Cheol-ju to have dinner together at a restaurant. At that moment, Sung-hoon laughed at Cheol-ju's more religious appearance. Cheol-ju seemed offended by Sung-hoon's words, hoping that Sung-hoon would soon receive punishment to realize all his mistakes. After Cheol-ju said that, the police came to the restaurant to arrest Sung-hoon, who had caused chaos around the temple the day before. On the other hand, Jun-sok had been serving a prison sentence for 17 years and would soon be released after receiving a 3-year remission from the police. In the remaining years of his sentence, Hae-ji, who was a former member of Rainbow in high school, visited Jun-sok and confessed that she was pregnant during high school and now has a son who is often involved in gang fights, so her son ended up in the same prison as Jun-sok. Hae-ji's main purpose in meeting Jun-sok was to ask for his help to protect her son, Sung-hoon, who was rumored to be targeted for assassination by a gang in prison. After meeting with Hae-ji, Jun-sok met with his henchman in prison named Ho-chul to ask about the person who would kill Sung-hoon. Ho-chul then explained that their gang intended to do so because Sung-hoon had attacked the gang leader under Jun-sok. Upon hearing this, Jun-sok summoned Sung-hoon and asked his henchman not to touch Sung-hoon, then invited him to smoke together in the guard's room. Jun-sok, known as the highest leader in the prison, seemed capable of controlling everything in the prison, including the guards who obeyed him. At that moment, Jun-sok informed Sung-hoon about Hae-ji's request for his help to protect him, so Jun-sok asked Sung-hoon to maintain his behavior while in prison. On another occasion, the inmates organized a basketball match to celebrate the prison's anniversary, but unfortunately, during the game, Sung-hoon accidentally bumped into Ho-chul, causing a commotion. Fortunately, the commotion was quickly stopped by the guards. Jun-sok met Sung-hoon again, reminding him not to get involved in fights with other guards because Jun-sok would soon be released from prison and couldn't watch over him directly. Outside the prison, Jun-sok's henchmen made noise using their car horns and asked the guards to release their boss. At the same time, Jun-sok was busy handling some of his release documents. On the other hand, Ho-chul had also completed his sentence that night and intended to serve Jun-sok, whom he regarded as a role model in prison. When leaving the prison, Jun-sok was greeted by all of his henchmen, and when he asked about Eun-ki's whereabouts, his henchmen said the vice president director was preparing a welcome party for Jun-sok. Hearing that Eun-ki had become the vice president director, Jun-sok began to feel that something was wrong with his gangster group. Shortly after, Jun-sok was taken to a restaurant where Eun-ki was waiting, and Jun-sek again felt something suspicious when he saw everyone who was completely unfamiliar, unlike when he used to lead them in the past. Jun-sok then asked Eun-ki about what their gangsters had been doing all this time, but Eun-ki just answered vaguely, even telling Jun-sok to go on vacation abroad, which made Jun-sok upset. Strangely, all the gangster members who saw Jun-sok's behavior seemed to be ready to protect Eun-ki, and Jun-sok realized that the situation had changed because Eun-ki controlled many gangster businesses. After the welcome party ended, Eun-ki ordered his henchmen to arrange tickets abroad for Jun-sok, while Eun-ki would leave for business matters. The next day, when Jun-sok left the hotel, he contacted Hae-ji to pick him up because he felt uncomfortable being escorted by the henchmen prepared by Eun-ki. At that time, Jun-sok went to a rehabilitation hospital to visit Song Ki-ho, whom he had ordered to attack Dong-soo in the past. Jun-sok seemed surprised why Ki-ho could enter the rehabilitation hospital, but Ki-ho did not answer that question and asked Jun-sok to leave. Before leaving, Jun-sok asked why Ki-ho killed Dong-soo and gave him some money so that Ki-ho could live a better life. Seeing Jun-sok's attitude, Ki-ho felt touched and said he thought Jun-sok would act like Eun-ki, who never gave him money and only provided illegal drugs that made him have to go through rehabilitation. Showing his scars, Ki-ho admitted to being tortured by Eun-ki just for making a small mistake. Knowing this, Jun-sok became more aware that Eun-ki was trying to replace his position as the gang leader. After visiting Ki-ho, Jun-sok went to Kim's residence, where Kim recounted how Eun-ki managed to take over the gang while Jun-sok was in prison. Several years ago, because Eun-ki was released from prison earlier than Jun-sok, Kim decided to give him a job to take care of some gangster businesses. A year later, some gang members approached Kim and reported that Eun-ki had removed old members who were loyal to Jun-sok and even eliminated Kim's trusted people. Ki also asked Kim to step down from the gang, but Kim refused, even though he didn't have the power to resist Ki. Kim hoped Jun-sok would remain the gang leader because Jun-sok's father was the one who founded their gang. In the early days of their gang, Kim was just a shoeshiner who was eventually promoted as a henchman by Lee because Kim knew a lot of information about the Yakuza who intended to monopolize trade at the Busan port. To eliminate the Yakuza, they fought against the Japanese gang, who surprisingly brought sharp weapons, even though Korean gangsters considered fighting with weapons to be done only by losers. Because of that, Kim got stabbed and Jun-sok immediately took his henchmen to the hospital. Sometime later, Lee was seen staying at the hospital to ensure Kim's safety. Meanwhile, the Yakuza, who had connections with the government, paid off the authorities to arrest all of Lee's gang members, and when the police came to the hospital, Lee immediately hid Kim and surrendered himself to protect Kim, who was still injured. Sometime later, Lee was released in a dire condition after being tortured by corrupt prison guards. After recovering, Lee went to Japan to meet the Yakuza bosses who had destroyed his gang. Before meeting the Yakuza bosses, Lee bought a sashimi knife to eliminate each Yakuza boss who bribed Korean authorities. With this incident, the Yakuza clan leader met Lee to discuss cooperation between the gangs to prevent further confrontation. After that, they agreed on the condition that Lee would have full control in Busan. Shortly after the cooperation was established, Lee, who didn't want to share business profits with the Yakuza, began to eliminate Japanese gangsters in Korea until Lee's gang became the sole and most respected ruler in Korea. Back to the present, Kim then hunted over his personal savings of 2 billion won and hoped that Jun-sok would resolve the internal issues within their gang. On the way home, Jun-sok was confronted by Ki's trusted person who offered him a plane ticket so that Jun-sok could leave the country immediately, but Jun-sok refused to accept it. The next day, Jun-sok met his most loyal former henchman named Min and chose to leave the gang rather than become Ki's subordinate. Min then invited Jun-sok to meet his comrade, Min-ho, who was still faithfully awaiting Jun-sok's freedom. While chatting, the two of Jun-sok's henchmen asked him to take over the gang controlled by Ki immediately, but Jun-sok admitted that he didn't know where to start. Hearing Jun-sok's pessimism, Min immediately removed his wig and showed a burn scar on his head, telling him that Ki had disabled him, so he would act alone if Jun-sok didn't decide to take over the gang. Therefore, Jun-sok finally resolved to take over the power that rightfully belonged to him. On another day, Jun-sok met Hae-ji to propose collaborating to open a nightclub because he knew Sung-hoon would soon be released from prison and could become Jun-sok's new henchman. Meanwhile, Jo-tae, who was one of Jun-sok's trusted henchmen, was instructed to approach Ki's henchmen to gather information about their weaknesses. Before starting his mission, Jun-sok gave Jo-tae some money to facilitate his henchmen mingling with Ki's henchmen. On the other hand, Jun-sok was seen meeting with the police chief and bribing him to carry out his plan to get rid of Ki. The police chief then warned Jun-sok not to act recklessly, which could cause loss of life that could threaten the police chief's career, while Jun-sok could end up back in prison. Several days later, Sung-hoon was released from prison and welcomed by his friends and Hae-ji, who gave him a sports motorcycle as a gift from the money given by Jun-tae. That night, Sung-hoon and his friends went to Hae-ji's luxurious nightclub, and they questioned how Hae-ji was able to open the club. Sung-hoon, knowing that Hae-ji was collaborating with Jun-sok, tried to change the subject by inviting his friends to party until he ended up being intimate with a woman. The next morning, Sung-hoon received a call from Jun-sok inviting him to have a meal together and offering cooperation to take over Ki's power in Busan. Before leaving, Jun-sok asked Sung-hoon to bring his henchmen to dine with him, but Sung-hoon insisted that Jun-sok didn't need to do that. Hearing this, Jun-sok explained the importance of family within a gang, which should always be built because they would face various problems together. If everything was based on money, then the sense of family and loyalty to a gang would disappear. Meanwhile, Eun-ki's trusted person contacted his boss to report Jun-sok's suspicious movements, including Jun-sok's closeness with Sung-hoon, who had previously clashed with them. On the other hand, Jo-tae provided information to Jun-sok about 3 high-ranking gangsters under Eun-ki who were lacked loyalty, which often conflicting with fellow gang members. After hearing the report, Jun-sok instructed Cool-min and Min-ho to execute their plan, but he reminded them that the chaos they would cause should not result in loss of life. Shortly afterward, Jun-sok met Sung-hoon and his henchmen for a meal, also informing them of the grand plan he intended to carry out. After the meal, Jun-sok and Sung-hoon drank together while discussing Sung-hoon's childhood. Because Sung-hoon drank too much, Jun-sok had to help him home, and upon arriving in front of his house, Sung-hoon, still drunk, thunked Jun-sok because it was the first time he felt someone protecting and guiding him like a father. The next day, Sung-hoon and the others began to execute their plan to incapacitate the 3 gang leaders to weaken Eun-ki's power. Several days later, Yoon-ji met with Jun-sok to express her disappointment because Jun-sok had made Sung-hoon a gang member. Jun-sok then said that even though Sung-hoon didn't become his henchman, Hae-ji's son would still be a gangster due to Sung-hoon's painful childhood. With Sung-hoon joining Jun-sok's gang, they could at least keep an eye on him, and Jun-sok also intended to give Sung-hoon the best position within his gang. On the other hand, Sung-hoon went to the temple to meet Cheolju and make a small donation to the temple. At that moment, Sung-hoon admitted that he preferred donating his money rather than having to pay taxes. That night, Jo-tae was eating by the roadside with Chul-min and Min-ho while showing off his newly made Pikachu tattoo. During their conversation, Cool-min went to the restroom, and at the same time, Jo-tae and Min-ho were hit by a car belonging to Eun-ki's henchmen, causing them to be rushed to the hospital. Jun-sok then received a call from Eun-ki, who said he did all this because Jun-sok had started a war with him. Eun-ki also asked Jun-sok to meet him for a one-on-one conversation. The next day, accompanied by Sung-hoon, Jun-sok met Eun-ki at the agreed-upon location. At that moment, Eun-ki offered Jun-sok a small portion of his territory, which made Jun-sok angry, and he rejected the offer. On the other hand, Eun-ki's trusted person asked for Sung-hoon's family name, which turns out to be Hund, and requested him to meet Eun-ki, who knew all about Sung-hoon's father. Sometime later, Sung-hoon appeared to meet Eun-ki at a cafe, where Eun-ki revealed that Sung-hoon's father was Han Dong-soo. This reminded Sung-hoon of the time when he was taken by his mother to Dong-soo's funeral. Eun-ki then lied by claiming to be Jun-sok's henchman, assigned to gain Dong-soo's trust to facilitate Jun-sok's plan to kill Dong-soo. To convince Sung-hoon, Eun-ki even brought Ki-ho as a witness until Sung-hoon couldn't believe that Jun-sok could be his father's murderer. Several days later, Jun-sok gathered all his henchmen and gave them money, asking them to continue their lives as ordinary people. Jun-sok decided to disband his gang because Kim had just passed away, and he planned to end his war with Eun-ki alone. Meanwhile, Eun-ki was preparing all his henchmen to attack Jun-sok after Kim's cremation ceremony. The next day, all members of the gang came to pay their final respects to Kim. On the other hand, the police searched all the cars that came to the funeral to secure all the weapons stored in the gang members' car trunks, forcing Eun-ki's subordinates to come up with a new plan. After Kim's cremation ceremony was completed, the police chief withdrew all his subordinates to return to the office. Shortly after, a convoy of cars belonging to Jun-sok and Eun-ki was seen leaving the crematorium, with Eun-ki seemingly having prepared his subordinates to intercept Jun-sok. Unfortunately, Eun-ki's plan failed as Jun-sok suddenly stopped his car, causing all the cars behind him to stop as well. Quickly, Jun-sok beat up Eun-ki and tortured some of Eun-ki's subordinates using a woodcutter in front of everyone. All the gang members could only remain silent in fear, witnessing Jun-sok's brutal actions, whom they considered weak and only relied on Lee's name. With that incident, all the gang members finally submitted to Jun-sok, not daring to look directly into his eyes. That night, all the gang members, including the gang leaders, went to see Jun Sok to apologize and promised to obey all of Jun Sok's commands. At the same time, Sung-hoon received a call from Ki-ho, who had learned about the downfall of Eun-ki's dominance, so he dared to tell the whole truth about Dong-su's death over a decade ago. At that time, Ki-ho confessed that Jun Sok only ordered him to injure Dong-su without killing him because Jun Sok knew that Dong-su would kill him. On the day of the attack, Eun-ki, who had betrayed Dong-su by becoming Jun Sok's subordinate, instead ordered Ki-ho to finish off Dong-su. After that, Ki-ho now realizes that Eun-ki intentionally did all of this because Eun-ki was very ambitious to become the gangster ruler in Busan, thus planning to eliminate Dong-su and Jun Sok, who were the biggest gang leaders at the time. After hearing all of Ki-ho's story, Sung-hoon, along with some of his subordinates, immediately went to the hospital to eliminate Eun-ki and his subordinate, who was being treated at the hospital after being attacked by Jun Sok earlier. The next day, Jun Sok, missing Dong-su, came to the streets where Dong-su took his last breath after being stabbed several times by Ki-ho. Shortly after, the police chief contacted Jun Sok expressing his anger because he believed that the deaths of Eun-ki and his subordinates were Jun Sok's doing. The police chief then asked Jun Sok to bring Eun-ki's killer to the police station, and if Jun Sok failed to do so, he threatened to send Jun Sok back to prison. After receiving the call, Jun Sok immediately contacted Sung-hoon to meet him because he knew that Sung-hoon was the one who had eliminated Eun-ki in the hospital. At the designated meeting location, Jun Sok informed Sung-hoon that the police would arrest the perpetrator of Eun-ki's murder because the police had warned Jun Sok to prevent confrontation in the struggle for power among the gangsters. Therefore, Jun Sok asked Sung-hoon to go abroad until he resolved the issue. Jun Sok said he would cover all of Sung-hoon's expenses abroad, including facilitating all of Sung-hoon's desires. In the end of the film, it is shown that Sung-hoon receives the plane ticket prepared by Jun Sok and says he has known that Jun Sok is the one who ordered the killing of his father. Upon hearing this, Jun Sok appears shocked and unable to speak because he just learned that Sung-hoon, whom he has been protecting all this time, is Dong-su's son. Meanwhile, Sung-hoon leaves Jun Sok's car and tears up his plane ticket while lamenting all the truths about his father and Jun Sok, who has always treated him well. Moral lesson from the story: when chasing after gangsters, remember to bring your singing voice and always check if the karaoke room has a secret exit for emergencies. Otherwise, you might end up with more bruises than high notes.